The NES Turtle games are pretty good. Yeah, all of them. I don't know about Tournament Fighters, as I haven't played, well, any version of it, but I'm sure you get the same result from bashing my turtle figures together. Guess if I really wanted to play it, or any of the old TMNT games, I just download the ROM. Yeah, okay. Alright, yeah, sure, fuck it, I'll buy it. I'm not really sure what kind of support that shows, but I'm just happy these games are getting any kind of re-release at all, since most of it is in some sort of limbo, or something they just never be released again. We've had some official ways to play these games. The first NES Turtles game was on the Wii, until it got removed anyway. We've also had some ways to play the arcade games. Thanks to things like the arcade 1-up cabinets that have Turtles Arcade and Turtles in Time. Before that, there was the Xbox Live Arcade, which had Turtles Arcade, until it was also eventually pulled. Good God, I am saying arcade so fucking much. I am sorry. Battle Nexus and Mutant Nightmare also had the arcade versions of Turtles 2 and Turtles in Time, but the music was changed. I actually fuck with the altered music for Turtles in Time, as it was pretty good, and even the reshelled music was alright. Mainly, I just like the track for Starbase. Sure, it's more mellow than what was in the original game, but, I mean, shit's good. The Mutant Nightmare version of Starbase is also really fucking good. I mean, anything is better than what Battle Nexus did to the original arcade music. Such a boring ass beat that's used for every level. Also, why only that one song? Look, it's just nice to finally have all of these games released in one nice package on modern consoles. Now just do that, but for these games. Oh right, the games. Starting with the first one, the most polarizing one. Opinions on this game are certainly opinions, that's for sure. People are all over the place with thoughts on the first Turtles game. Some saying it's really good, to others downright regarding it as one of the worst games ever. As for me, I think it's good. I played it along with Turtles 2 and 3 at my granny's house as a kid. I remember it being a lot of fun, and it's nice to have a Turtles game that doesn't fall into the usual beat-em-up genre. Not that there's anything wrong with the later games. I actually think Turtles 2 and 3 are superior, with Manhattan Project being underrated in my opinion. Still, I had fun with it, but not everyone else did. I think one thing we can all agree on is that this game is a hard son of a bitch. That's a universal understanding, and for the people who don't like it, it's a major factor. The game is kinda ruthless. As a kid, I never beat it. I could only get to Area 3, and that was it. There's only 6 stages in the game, so I mean, I was halfway there at least. For that matter, I never beat Turtles 2 or 3 either. I'd make it further each time, but never to the end. So I'm hoping to fix that with, well, this. I mean, now that I'm older and wiser, maybe it'll be easier. Well, I mean, it is agreed to be one of the hardest games for a reason. I promise, I like the game. Which is why I'm gonna put off actually talking about the game itself and focus on Turtles around the game's development. It's fascinating to still see how much influence the original Mirage Comics had on early Turtle properties, especially when you consider just how much of Eastman and Laird's original vision gets stomped out in the '87 cartoon. I enjoy this series, and even though it helped launch Turtles into the mainstream, there's no denying it tainted the image of the brand moving forward. You mentioned TMNT to people, and it's all cowabunga and pizza, which isn't even remotely close to the source material. It became something made for kids as opposed to comic fans. Honestly, it's a lot like the Adam West Batman series, which is something I also love. It helped launch Batman into a household name, and while people today know it's not how Batman is, and it's more of an interpretation of the character, Turtles is a different story. The original cartoon is still the measuring stick for many people, despite it being, much like the Adam West series, an interpretation and not the original. There are people out there who still think the Turtles should always be silly and never serious, because that's how the original Turtles were. Shit like that is why people initially didn't like the 2003 and even the 2012 series. It's a weird fan base. Like, how you gonna hate on the 2003 series for being dark and not at all like the 80s cartoon, but love the first live-action movie that's much more in line with the 2003 series, and hate Secret of the Ooze when it's the 80s cartoon in movie form? Huh, what do you know? A polarizing fan base for a polarizing game. How fitting. I've always wondered if kids back in the 80s ever thought much about some of the meaner looking turtle designs that were used as promotional art on various things. Even the toys had the turtles look mean as hell. Now, they wouldn't know it at the time, but it's the influence of the Mirage Comics. What do you think the first NES game got its cover from? The second printing of issue 4. This is what the first print looks like. Many of the kids playing this game for the first time, myself included, though years later, were confused by all the turtles wearing red bandanas. Are they all Raphael? No, the Mirage Turtles all wear red bandanas, and I'm surprised they never try to alter it. Surely it wouldn't have been that hard. It's a really cool cover that Eastman himself commissioned Michael Dooney to paint. It's certainly iconic, and I get why they chose it. It's a vaguely high-tech location the turtles are in, and they're fighting robots. It absolutely looks like they'd be in a Technodrome. That's not actually the case though. In the comic the cover is taken from, the turtles are in the TCRI building, and they're not fighting robots or any other sort of thing from Dimension X, but instead it's the Utrons. The glowy platform they're standing on with all the pretty sparkly bits is a translocation device that transports the turtles across the galaxy. No Technodrome, I'm sorry. The Mirage influence, much like in the first movie, is really strong in this game. The turtle sprites are very much taken from the meaner look of the Mirage Turtles and the Playmates Toys artwork, which is also heavily based off the Mirage Comics. Turtles 2 and 3 have more detailed sprites for sure, but they're more influenced by the chubbier, cutesier turtles of the 80s cartoon, ones like what you'd see on merchandise like this. It's a far cry from Mirage and even the first NES Turtles. It's not only reflected in the sprites, but also in the higher quality images of the turtles, like what you'd see in the intros and character select screens. The first game having images that look very Mirage, while Turtles 2 and 3 have them more kid-friendly. Turtles 3 even has an 8-bit version of the 80s intro. It doesn't end with just the turtles, as other characters in the first game are very Mirage inspired. Shredder, Splinter, the Foot Ninja, and even the Mousers are more in line with their original comic appearance. April is the only character that just looks like her 80s cartoon counterpart across all 3 games. She's not one-to-one in the first game, like in the other games, but there's nothing of Mirage April in here. The Mirage influence doesn't stop the character designs, as the environments are much dirtier in the first one. The brick walls that make up the sewers are full of cracks and holes. The pipes that stretch across the sewer walls have harsh 8-bit shading that's reflective of what's found in the Mirage Comics. It's a dirty, gritty, and very colorful environment. Very comic book. The story, what little there even is of one, borrows a story beat in just about every Turtles media, but it sticks closer to Mirage Comics version. It's the abduction of Splinter, and it's really impressive how much of Mirage Comic they replicated. The door the Turtles come in is the exact door found in issue 3 that the scene was taken from. The Mouser close to the shelf in the game is in the exact pose as 2 of them from the Mirage comic. The bookshelf with the 2 fucked up shelves is the same one that you can find in issue 3. Both the upper two shelves on it are fucked in the same way. It's got many of the same cracks along the walls, and even the rug the turtles are standing on is the same one found in issue 2. The beads that act as Splinter's door to his room is also present. Same with their TV, table, and the rug they had them on. For more evidence that they pulled right from the comics, Raphael is always the one who knocks on the door and enters exclaiming, "Master!" even if he's not in your party. They might have already had it programmed for a red bandana turtle, since in the comics they all wear red, so that way it could be any turtle that does said action. Might also explain why they never bothered altering the game's cover in any way. As for the story itself, you rescue April, and then Splinter. It's a video game on the NES, who fucking cares? It's the gameplay everyone cares about, and yeah, it's fun. Well, for the most part. It's impossible to talk about this game without getting into the more frustrating aspects, which there's a lot of. It's like the game is designed to piss you off. There's so much unfair bullshit that I can't even ignore as someone who likes the game. Turtles doesn't hate you. It's not Tomb Raider 3, where the game and its developers hate you and want you fucking dead, so you stop buying these games every year and they can actually take a fucking break. The game's just designed to be really hard and test your patience. Really test your patience. The ever-popular example people like to point to is the dam mission in level 2. It's the one that requires you to disable 8 bombs in 2 minutes and 20 seconds. Everyone struggles with it and calls it the hardest level in the game, but it's really not that bad. Like, I don't know why you're struggling, just use save states. See, shit's fucking easy, stop being a pussy. Jokes aside, it is really tricky, especially your first time through. That time limit looks strict, but the level is really short and you can make it to the last bomb with 30 seconds to spare. That is if you know what you're doing. The other infamous part of this level is the electric seaweed that will drain your health quickly because of how tight of a squeeze it is. The level is expecting you to rush, and that's what that trap is ready to prey on. If you slow down and take your time through that section, you can get through it with minimal damage. Now I know that the idea of slowing down at all with a time limit sounds counterproductive, but that part with the seaweed and the last part, also with seaweed, that leads to the 8th and final bomb, are the only sections you really need to take your time on. Hell, the last section with the seaweed isn't even that hard compared to the other part, as it's more straightforward and doesn't make for the whole challenge of that screen like the previous one. Believe me, I know this level looks intimidating, and given the reputation it's garnered over the years, it certainly sounds scary, but it's actually one of the easier bits in the game. It doesn't hold a candle to the amount of frustration that Tuba Race from Earthworm Jim will give you. Trying to keep that fucking snow globe masquerading as a submarine from breaking with only 99 seconds to get to the end is the most bullshit thing I've ever had to put up with. Get in the fucking trash, Jim. If you're really struggling with that level, then swap out the turtles when their health gets too low. You can keep them from dying outright as long as you manage their health properly, assuming you don't get dragged by the insta-death seaweed. Yeah, one of the neat things about this game, and what separates it from most Turtles games, is that you can swap out turtles on the fly. Turtles 3 let you swap between them, but only after you've died. Danger of the Ooze let you swap between turtles as well. It even has the same find and rescue mechanic that this one has, in case you lose one turtle. Yeah, I bet you didn't know that losing a turtle doesn't mean they're lost forever in the first game. Starting with Area 3, there is rooms that will have your fallen turtles that you can rescue and reclaim. It's one rescue per level, and it's usually the most recent turtle you lost that you'll reclaim. So if you lost Leo and then lost Don, the one you'll most likely find is Don. However, if you choose to leave Don because he's been simping for April one too many times and come back in the room, there's a chance it'll be Leo you can rescue instead. They rejoin your party with full health, so there's no need to worry about stuffing them full of pizza. If you go in the room with a full party, there's nothing in there, like not even a pizza, so the room serves no function other than to find and rescue any lost turtles. The turtles themselves have different strengths and weaknesses, so it's important to make sure you don't lose any. Except for Mikey, because he's fucking trash in this game. Yeah, toss his ass in there. Oh, what's that? He's your favorite? He's your boy? Your boy is carrying around candlesticks trying to pass them off as nunchucks for his weak-ass hits. The most damage he's ever done is to my trash can. Swapping out the turtles, as mentioned, is a big part of this game, and knowing which turtle to use is key. That mindset should also go for which ones to rescue, as your favorite turtle that you want to reclaim might not be the most suitable for the job. So let's get into the vital statistics of the heroes in a half shell, starting with the fearless leader himself, Leonardo. Leo's alright. Despite being the leader and the most skilled of the turtles, he's only a bit above Michelangelo in terms of usefulness. In fact, he's actually weaker than Michelangelo, but his sword gives him range, which is something both Raph and Mikey lack, so it makes up for his weakness. Leo's range is only second to Donatello's staff. Leo can pull his swords out faster than Don can draw his bow, so there's your trade-off. His speed is on par with Raph's, as both turtles with the blade hover in at an average speed. Not as fast as Mikey, but not as slow as Don. All around, the leader in blue isn't too bad. If we want to talk about the power bonuses the turtles get when they're low on health, he's actually stronger than Raphael. Yeah, there's extra strength bonuses the turtles get when they have little under half health. It's not something talked about much, and you might not ever even notice while playing it, but it's something to keep in mind. The different items you can find that the turtles can equip means you have to take into account which items to give to which turtle. Mikey's generally the weakest and has poor range, so maybe you want to give him the throwing stars to make up for that. Again, it's all stuff to consider, as once an item is in possession by that turtle, that's the one that holds on to it. No weapon swapping. Well, except for the boomerang. Now, I won't be going in depth into what all the weapon damages are on different enemies, or any of the power bonuses the turtles get. I just want to do a general overview of the turtles, and if you want to know how much deeper it goes, there's a link in the description explaining it in great detail. To close out on Leo, he's average. Not too great, but not too bad either. He's one you'll use a lot because of his range. That also means there's a good chance he'll be one of the first ones you lose. Cowabunga, dude. Now let's send Leo away to the jungle so he can come back less shit. And now we can talk about the hot-headed Ralph. Raphael is easily the turtle with the worst range in the game. The screwdrivers I used to use as a kid to pretend I was Raph has more range than these forks he calls size. Even with his piss poor range, I'd hold off and chuck him in the trash for later. He's got good speed, as mentioned before, and he's one of the stronger turtles. I actually use him a lot for clearing out enemies, as his quick speed and extra damage make up for what he lacks in range. Sure, you have to let the enemies get closer to you, but that quicker draw and power makes it feel more like you're coming at them than them coming at you. For the most part. Since Raph is my go-to for clearing out enemies, I do tend to view him and Mikey as a little more expendable than Leo and Don. I let Raph and Mike take the hits I would prefer Don or Leo to avoid because of their range. Now, obviously, you should try to make sure you don't lose any of the turtles, but I'd recommend trying to at least keep Raph around for the bosses, as his extra attack power comes in handy. He's bound to get hit because of his trash range, but you can swap him out before he dies so that another turtle can come and finish the job. All in all, the turtle that got to keep his red bandana isn't as bad as you might think. His range is ass, but his speed and strength can make up for it, with practice. So we're just gonna keep Raphael out of the trash and just toss his size in there. It's okay, he's pretty insistent he can get him back. Speaking of things that belong in the trash, let's check on the party dude Michelangelo and see if he's worth digging out of it or not. I've been harsh on him so far, but even the game's manual says his power is only average when compared to his brothers. It doesn't seem to speak too highly of him, does it? It also says enemies around his feet usually fall prey to his nunchucks. Well, he does have more range than Raphael when it comes to enemies on the ground, but Mikey's nunchucks still don't reach as high up as Raph's size, which hardly have any range as it is. When Michelangelo has the high ground, he does do a good job keeping the enemies at bay, as his nunchucks do have range on the downward swing. I use Michelangelo the same way I do Raphael, for clearing out enemies in rooms. Mikey's weaker, but his speed is nice, and it can even come in handy for mini-bosses. For the main boss fights, Michelangelo is good to use as a way to wear the enemy down. They require more hits, as he's the weakest turtle, but if you're good enough, you can use his speed to get in a lot of shots. His speed could be what's intended to make up for his range, and lack of any real power to his hits. There's gotta be more to him though. Let's check the manual again. It says his courage will amaze you. Is that hinting at something? Alright, look, I know, I said I wasn't gonna go into the different strength bonuses, but for Mikey, we're going to make an exception, as he gets disrespected a lot in this game. I mean, he's in my fucking trash can. He needs some help. So, normally, Mikey is the weakest turtle in the game. If we're going by their normal stats, the order of weakest to strongest turtle is Michelangelo, Leonardo, Raphael, and to no one's fucking surprise, Donatello. This is going by raw power, but it's also how people generally define which turtle wasn't better off just being accidentally left behind by Splinter. It's Raphael. Now, when you take into account the power boost the turtles will get once they're a little under half health, things take a different turn for Michelangelo. The weakest to strongest of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is Raphael, Leonardo, Michelangelo, and Donatello's just the GOAT. Kinda funny how the turtles with any real range still stay in their first and third place. But Mikey here goes from the weakest to the second strongest. So when he's low on health and you're feeling brave enough to use him, just remember, it takes 8 pounds of pressure per square inch to break bone. The nunchucks generate 90. Holy fuck, Playmates. No wonder they got rid of his nunchucks. I can't say how helpful the strength boost is, as this isn't a game where you ever want to be low on health. Like, at all. It's advised, and I'm advising you right now, to stay stocked on health as much as you can, and to abuse the pizza respawns as much as possible. You might not feel like doing that, but I'm sure you don't feel like restarting the game over either. Your courage is commendable, Mikey me boy, but my trash can is lonely. I've saved the best turtle for last. The one you absolutely never want to lose, but you probably will because of how useful he is. Mr. Big Dick himself, Donatello! He's regarded as the best turtle in the game by fans, critics, your mom, everybody. He's got the best reach and the strongest attack power of all the turtles. He's also the slowest. I mean, he's gotta have some fucking weakness. He can't be completely goated. He can take out bosses quicker than the other turtles, and his strength boost makes his already ridiculous power even greater. The only real drawback to our machine-doing turtle is that he's incredibly slow. But even having said that, Don's slow speed isn't that bad, as his range can more than make up for it. Don's most useful for keeping distance between you and enemies. He's also really good for clearing out a room. When attacking straight up or down, he can reach enemies the other turtles can't, and clear a path above or below that might have been crawling with him. Donatello is also good for the boss fights because of his higher damage output. I'm not sure I'd start the fight with him, as you can use another turtle to weaken the boss first. There's really not much negative I can say about Donnie, as he is, without question, the best turtle in the game. Even with his slower rate and attack, he's still got that strength and range, which more than makes up for it. The fact he can clear out enemies on other platforms above and below makes him extremely vital. he's good for crowd control. All 4 turtles have various strengths and weaknesses that make it vital to know when to use which turtle at which time. There's a lot of different factors to consider when selecting a turtle, and that extends to knowing which weapons are best to give to said turtle. Or you could just stock up on scrolls and use Donatello. The other weapons are fine. You got the shuriken, triple shuriken, boomerang, and the before mentioned scroll. The scroll is by far the strongest weapon in the game and will just obliterate enemies and make the bosses a joke. They're only in certain locations and can be tricky to find, but when you know where to go, you can farm the scrolls and give them to all 4 turtles, which basically breaks the game. Since the scrolls can just break the game, the other weapons must be worthless then, huh? I mean, no, they're still useful. They're more abundant than the scrolls, so the shurikens and boomerangs aren't garbage. The single shuriken and boomerang do roughly the same amount of damage, with only a few enemies going down quicker using the shuriken. The triple shuriken is actually not that great when compared to the rest of the sub-weapons. Its damage output is the weakest, and the only time it's ever on par with the boomerang and single shuriken is when it gets the strength boost from your dying turtle. You would think with it being 3 shurikens at once, it would be stronger, but the range is probably the trade-off here. You've got one going horizontally, another going upward, and one more going downward. All your bases are covered. Scrolls are still the best weapons in the game, but the others still have value and aren't worth putting in the trash. They're not Michelangelo. It's worth noting that sub-weapons will carry over with you from level to level, so stock up on those scrolls, cause I know you will. The turtles aren't the only ones who can acquire sub-weapons, as you can stock up on anti-Foot Clan missiles for the party wagon. Those roller cars that totally didn't kill you at the start of the game because you were smart and got out of the way can be obliterated with a single missile from the turtle van. Wait, weren't those on the overworld map? Yes, this game has an overworld map. I mean, obviously, you can't drive in buildings or sewers. The overworld map is essentially the main hub of every level. It's where you'll find the entrances to the sub-areas in the game, like the buildings, sewers, caves, or whatever that leads you to the level's end boss. It's fun to run around and explore, but the later levels get a little more maze-like, which can be confusing. Fortunately, you have a map, it's shit. At least it feels that way if you don't know how to use it. It displays the location of buildings and sewers you can go in as a white square. The red squares are where you can go within the overworld, and the flashing white plus symbol is you, bitch! It can help you orientate yourself for those of you who hate looking up a guide. The overworld isn't all about exploring though, as sometimes you'll get ambushed by purple gorillas. Oh, they're just foot soldiers, it's fun to run them over then. The before mentioned roller cars that I still believe didn't kill you at the start of the game are also patrolling around. Unless you're in the turtle van, stay away. The turtle van looks like a mini mutants toy. Actually, the whole overworld feels like you just popped open one of those mini turtle playsets with how small everything looks. Just look at the Technodrome. It's absolutely in scale with how the toy is presented. It's also a really easy boss fight. The menu actually refers to it as a Technodrome Guardian. Couldn't tell you why, but there's some fun trivia for you. Shredder is also pathetically easy. I guess the trade-off is that getting to him alive, even with scrolls, is hard. Come to think of it, none of the bosses are really that hard. The only one that's even a little bit of a challenge is Mecha Turtle, and even then, not really. The tricky part with him is that you're in a tight space and you have to deal with him being able to fly wherever he wants to. Oh, and the missiles can be annoying, but even that's stretching it. Bebop and Rocksteady are an absolute joke to the shock of no one. The Big Mouser has a lot of detail for an 8-bit game and looks really cool. Easy as fuck though. If I'm being honest, the game doesn't get truly hard until you're in the Technodrome making your way to Shredder. I'll admit that level 5 can be tricky, since you have to search for the Technodrome in underground caves, and it can be in one of 3 different locations. None of the enemies are too hard though, and there's warehouses that have pizza and scrolls so you can heal your turtles and stock back up on items. Level 4 is also really easy, since you just have to keep going through tunnels that have the biggest numbers on them. It might look like a confusing mess, but it's surprisingly straightforward. I was actually shocked how easy it was compared to level 3, which is also really easy. That is, once you know what you're doing. Level 3 used to be the furthest I could ever get as a kid, and it's where the game takes a major difficulty spike. It's got a lot of areas you don't actually need to bother with. Just stock up on missiles in the first building you see, and you can farm for scrolls and ropes in this one building here. You can easily get 99 scrolls for all 4 turtles, and we're going to go back to that in a second. I've already gone over how the down mission in level 2 is actually really easy. You really shouldn't be struggling with level 1, and if you are, stop playing. The game at that stage is still trying to teach you how to play and prepare you for the much harder levels to come. How well any of what it's trying to teach you actually comes across is a different story. A lot of people think the game's mechanics, levels, enemies, difficulty, really just the game itself is broken. See this? It's the first screen of the first level in the game, and what's immediately to your left? A manhole cover that's literally one button press away. What's the point of going down there? Well, other than using it as a way to run and hide from the roller car headed your way, you're taught how to move up and down ladders and are greeted by mousers that are a low-level threat. They really can't do much to hurt you, but they're easy enough to kill and learn how to fight against. When you get to the platform that looks like a misaligned T, you might try to attack upward, killing the mouser before it ever falls off the platform. Jumping on the platform gives you an idea of just how high you can jump, and beyond it, you're introduced to 2 new enemy types. The flying robot bug, cause I don't know what it's actually called, fuck off, and a foot soldier. The robot bug, I'm just gonna call it a scout fly, introduces you to the flying enemies, and you can either choose to attack or duck under them to avoid taking damage. The foot soldier is your introduction to the more humanoid enemies. I mean, look at some of these fucks, and they throw shurikens at you that you can either stand there like an idiot and get hit, or you can duck under them, just like with the flying enemies. The foot soldiers also being trained in ninja means they can jump as high as you, so trying to avoid them can sometimes result in a mid-air clash. After your initial encounter with a foot soldier, you are faced with another that acts as a mini-boss, because this game just likes having those for some fucking reason. I don't really understand it. The point is, it teaches you to keep your guard up for those kind of encounters. After that, you're treated to 2 foot soldiers at once, a slice of pizza and the way out of the sewer. Those enemies are not your priority and are easily avoidable, so just grab the pizza and leave. Guess where you come out from when you leave the sewer? Right below in front of the building you started behind. Did you waste your time then? Is the game pulling some kind of sick joke? No, it's literally showing you how to get to the next island over by drilling in your head that going in sub-areas is how you progress. If you go back down the sewer, you might even figure out the pizzas respawn, and I can't stress enough how much you should abuse the respawning pizza. And also weapons. The third sewer you go in teaches you extra shit, but I'm not here to hold your hand. Play the fucking game yourself. Well, what about the sewer that doesn't lead anywhere? What does it teach you? It teaches you that not all paths lead somewhere, which will definitely come in handy in level 5, while you're searching for the Technodrome. Nope, not here. What about the warehouse that's swarmed with enemies and has a full pizza? It's obviously a trap and isn't worth your time going in there, right? Correct. It's not worth the hassle, and there's areas in the game later that will prey on that, so you best learn it now. Stock up on health and items where it's safe, and don't try anything that might be too risky is the lesson here. The jumping is ass. Your ass! The jump is fine. It's a moon jump, but it's fine. How high the turtles jump depends on how hard you hit the button anyway. And if they're constantly moon jumping, maybe stop holding the fucking button down. When you need to make a big long jump, then yes, obviously, hold it down. I'm glad we can all agree on that. But if you need to make a smaller jump, then lightly tap it, or just put a little force into it, and they'll do a normal jump. Not every jump has to or even can be a big one, and the game teaches you to do smaller jumps on multiple different occasions. Not every platform needs to be jumped on or over anyway, you can just walk over it. I know, this bit has been made into a meme, but it's not a bad design. What actually happens if you miss that jump? You fall into the platform right underneath it and no harm is done. Yeah, the enemies respawn, which is absolutely bullshit and I hate it, but there's nothing that will immediately kill you if you fuck up. Also, fun fact, you can glitch your way up there. I'm not going to pretend the game isn't hard and doesn't have some unfair moments. The spacemen fuckers in the Technodrome are absolute bullshit. Scrolls can easily kill them though, and you can let them despawn themselves by letting them go off screen, but they're still a pain in my ass. The respawning enemies is actually something worth addressing. I've bitched about it, and it's annoying, but is it really that bad? Yes and no. Enemies are easy enough to kill, and as long as you take your time, they won't be an issue. If you're patient, you can let the enemies despawn themselves by waiting for them to walk off screen or fall down ladders. There's plenty of ways around them, but they'll always come back. Always, and it's so fucking annoying. Sure, as stated, most are easy enough to take care of, but it's the fact that you can clear out an area, just take a few steps back, and there's a chainsaw-wielding fucker ready to say hello again. It makes killing them feel pointless because they'll always return. At a point, it just starts to wear at you, especially when you're having to go through the same room to restock on pizza or sub-weapons. And let's not pussyfoot around it, it's the scrolls you're stocking up on. Ah yes, the scrolls. I said I'd get back to that, and here we are. This game is all about patience. It's been drilling that in your head in plenty of ways, and it's a game that requires practice. You're going to need a lot of patience and practice, but in order to actually get practice at the game, you're going to need the patience you'll be very quickly losing for this old piece of shit. But scrolls can be your savior. They can be your way out. They can make you feel invincible and completely undermine what the game is trying to instill in you. Why bother actually trying to be good at it when you just have to make sure you remember where it's easiest to farm for scrolls? Why bother learning when you should use each turtle in situations that a specific one would be good for when you can just stock them all up with scrolls and make their individual strengths and weaknesses a moot point? Just make sure you have plenty of scrolls and keep the only good turtle, Donatello, alive. This is the strategy used by most people to beat the game, and it sounds like such a cheap way to play the game. 'Cause it is. Here's the thing though, I don't blame anyone a single bit for doing it. While I don't think the game is as hard as people make it out to be, it's still a very challenging game. The game demands you learn it, and the more you play it, you will, but that's not exactly the most enticing way to play a game that can be unforgiving at times. You can learn and get better with every retry, but for a game that only has 2 continues, 4 if you put in the Konami code at the title screen, you're welcome. Getting to level 4 only to die and be sent all the way back to the start of the game can trigger the response of, yo, fuck this game. I wasn't alive when this game was first released, but seeing the responses from people who were kids when it was new, that certainly seems to be what happened. People stopped playing and would try to play it again as an adult to try and do what they couldn't as kids. Some did and discovered a newfound respect for the game, while others didn't, and clung even more so to the idea of it being a dated piece of garbage, best left to be forgotten by time in wake of its superior sequels. For many of the people who did finally beat the game all those years later, the strategy was stocking up on scrolls and using Donatello. Cheesing the game like that might not be the intended method, but it is a go-to strategy, and I can understand why. So, is a cheap tactic the only way to beat the game? No, not at all. It's the easiest way to do it if you're playing on native hardware, but that's not the only way to play anymore. Something this game would benefit greatly from is if it had unlimited continues. Now I know some of you might be thinking that would make it too easy, but considering most of you have probably never beaten this game, how about you pipe down? Unlimited continues doesn't automatically make a game easy. Just look at the Oddworld games. Just like having extra lives doesn't automatically make a game hard. This game has a lot of depth that you might not ever experiment with since you have the fear of having to start over again looming over your head. You know how you can negate that? With save states. Yes, I know. Emulation is everyone's favorite thing, and that beating a game using save states doesn't count. But keep listening. Everyone always asks for a modern way to play this game. Something that can make it more accessible. Well, here you go. You don't even have to abuse it or the rewind feature if you don't want to. You can use a save state at the start of every level so that when you game over, you can start from the beginning of that stage again. It can make it less stressful without just outright removing the challenge, and even if you don't use emulation, this can still apply to you. Do you know why? Because the Cowabunga collection is out now. It's going to be reintroduced to an entirely new generation who will most likely have less patience with its unfair bullshit than the kids who grew up with it when it was new. Save states and the rewind feature will be additional modern ways to play this game, and I think that'll be what will give it the accessibility it so desperately needs. The game isn't too hard the more you play it and get better at it, but it's going to require a lot of your time and patience, and I don't think many will give it to such an old and dated game like this. Saving whenever and wherever can remove a lot of that frustration. Now, I'm not suggesting you abuse it though, but you could, it's totally up to you. If you want to save after every jump, then go for it, but I think that would remove a lot of the challenge. I'm mostly just suggesting to use it in moderation. Some of these self-proclaimed hardcore gamers might denounce the idea of using save states and even call it cheap, but so is stocking up on the scrolls. Solely relying on one sub-weapon and one turtle to get through the game is a cheap tactic that is the go-to strategy for many people. It's how most are able to beat the game, and I can already hear some of you saying that it's a built-in strategy within the game, unlike save states. Save states might not have been in the game from the beginning, but the Cowabunga collection, it's part of the game now whether you like it or not. Like I said earlier, why bother actually learning the game's mechanics when you have the most powerful sub-weapon in the game to fall back on? You're not invincible, and if you get too reckless, you'll still easily die even with the almighty scroll, but I wouldn't worry about that. Just keep spamming it, you're doing great. Look, at the end of the day, you could argue that both methods are cheap, but at least with save states, you can restart from the level you died in as much as you want, making the game easier to learn and manage. And that's clearly where a lot of people's issues lie in this game, is that it's just so frustrating. It's perfectly manageable and rewarding to learn the game's mechanics and conquer it, but that's proven to be too much of an ask for people. This can at least make it smoother, and I think it'll help the game shake off its bad rep in the long run. Maybe. Don't be ashamed of how you want to play it though. If you want to abuse the fuck out of save states, then you go right ahead. If you want to never use them, that's also fine. You're free to play the game however you want. Even poorly, dear God, why? If the dam is still kicking your ass, just reload that stage over and over again until you know it like the back of your own dick. Just play the game, and give it an actual real chance without calling it shit. And hey, maybe after you feel comfortable enough, you can try to do it without save states, or even without relying so heavily on scrolls. Just maybe, you'll be able to conquer it and make your inner child proud. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is many things. It's challenging, frustrating, unique, fun, rewarding, polarizing, and a good game. It's not for everyone though, and that's fine. It's a game that demands a lot from the player, and games like that don't always connect with people. It's nice that the first Turtles game is one that tried something new among a lot of games it was released around, and I applaud it for that. There's not really another Turtles game like it, maybe outside of Danger of the Ooze, and that's a shame. There's so much potential for what TMNT games could be that extends beyond the usual beat-em-ups we always get. This first game, while flawed, is one that plenty of Turtles games could learn from. It's been fun revisiting it, and finally being able to say I beat it is something I'm proud of, though the ending is anticlimactic. It's a game I've got a new appreciation for that I didn't when I was younger. As a kid, it was just really hard, and while that's still true of it now, I'm able to grasp more of what it's trying to do. I don't know if you'll like it. It's really hard to say given how the game is. There's plenty of outside sources that can help you with it if you find yourself struggling, and don't be afraid to seek help. It's a game, so have fun with it. Take in all it has to offer and come to your own conclusions about it. You might still end up thinking it belongs in the trash with the rest of the Turtles. I, for one, feel the game doesn't belong in the trash. And if it can stay out of the trash, then maybe Michelangelo deserves another chance to be dug out of the trash. So I can chuck him in even harder, subscribe! Battle Nexus and Mutant Nightmare also had the arcade versions of Turtles 2 and Turtles in Time, but the music was changed. Actually, fuck with the altered music for Turtles in Time, as it was